There is no one size fits all or a simple fix when it comes to your well-being. Hi, my name is Josephine, founder of Positivity Center and Wellbeing Consultant, and a person figuring out how to be my best. So join me in conversation with friends, sharing what works for them, and then listen to what works for others so you can create something that will work for you. Awesome. Okay. Well, hello and welcome to the show today. I am your host, Josephine Tite, and today I am joined with a new friend from across the world, Carmanah McKenzie. Welcome to the show, Carmanah.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad we could make it work. I know we had to be a little bit more flexible with timing and whatnot, but we made it work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's going to maybe be the theme of our conversation, that we always find a way to make it work in our well-being.
I love that. I love that.
Before we begin and get too deep into a conversation, though, I'd love it if you just spend like a minute or two and share a little bit about yourself with the viewers today. What would you like them to know about you?
Yeah, for sure. So I live in London in the UK, but I'm sure you can tell from my accent, I am not from the UK. Well, I'm from Canada. I'm from Vancouver, but I actually am half Scottish and half Chinese. And my Scottish heritage is what brought me over to the UK because I'm very, very immersed in Chinese culture back at home, and I wanted to kind of see what the Scottish side was about. So that's what brought me over here. Similar to you, Josephine, as I understand, working in well-being in the workplace and also with individuals. What I see with people all over the world is people really struggling to balance work and life. You know, as a society, we celebrate work, we celebrate success through work. And that's really sad to me because I believe that we live one life. You know, no matter what religion you practice, no matter what you believe, this version of your life this is it. And I want to make the most of it for myself, and I want to help other people make the most of it as well. And so that's what I do for work. I help people make the most of their lives, and I do that through well-being coaching.
Mm-hmm. Well, in your online presence, you talk a lot about work and life harmony. You use the word harmony.
Yeah. Yes.
I really like that because I find that it's typically led by this idea of finding balance.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily is always possible to hold both sides of your life exactly in this equilibrium. Like, don't move.
Yes.
It works.
Yeah,
it works forever, right? You know?
Yeah.
So,
and
tell me about that. What does the work-life harmony mean for you? And like, how do you help people achieve that?
Yeah. So I think
I guess.
Yeah, I think harmony. I also like to use the word integration. And I actually I think typically people know work-life balance. That's the term that most people will have heard before. And I actually like life-work integration because work is a part of your life and not the other way around. And so in terms of trying to find that, because it's a constant, you never find it. It's not this finite thing that you get to and that's it. It's a work in progress, and that's what life is, right? We don't get to, I mean, the end is the end. It's death, and before that is this beautiful thing of life, and really looking to integrate the two together. But I would say that the biggest piece of trying to find what works for you is taking a step back and understanding what is important to you. And that's really the first step, because after that you can start to prioritize accordingly. But if you don't take that step back to actually look at your life, look at what's important to you, then you're kind of just blindly, moving forward on this hamster wheel. And sadly, sometimes decades can pass before you realize, like, gosh, I've been living this life that's really just not aligned to what's important to me.
Yeah. Okay. There's two things I really want to talk about. First thing, I'm going to say them now so we remember to talk about both of them, because I think they're both pretty key. First thing is, when you talk about that life-work integration, I'd really love to hear how you've done that for you.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I think would tie into is talking about, because on the registration form that you filled out, you said, when I asked what well-being meant to you, you said that well-being is the degree to which your desired quality of life matches your reality, which is, I think, where you're kind of going when you're talking about knowing what your priorities were, right? Okay. So let's begin. I just don't want to, I want to make sure, because sometimes I ask a question and then I forget the other question I really want to talk about. And those are two really important things that I think really are integrated in and of themselves in the well-being equation. So yeah, what's worked for you to find that, work-life integration / harmony?
Yeah, I think first off, it is understanding what's important to you. So for me, actually stepping back, understanding what is important to me. And I think two things that are very important. Well, there's lots, but two, I look at well-being in four pillars, which some people may have heard about, but physical, mental, financial, and social well-being. Um, Physical well-being, I was an athlete growing up, has, I think, always been a part of my identity, something that's a little easier for me to work with. Same with mental well-being. I wanted to go into counseling when I was younger, and then realized that coaching was really more suited to my personality. But again, mental well-being has been something historically that's been important to me. One that I'm focusing, or one that's very important to me now, or always has been, is social well-being and that idea of connection. I think it's become more apparent that it's important to me because I've moved abroad. So all of my siblings, my parents, my best friends, they all live in Canada. And that now means I have to make more effort to make sure that I nurture those relationships. And I do that. So having stepped back to actually look at, okay, this is really important to me, that means I need to set aside time for it. That means that I need to prioritize. I call my grandma once a week, even if it's just for 20 minutes to check in, speak to her. It's really important to me. If it's gone 2-3 weeks, because sometimes that happens, life happens. I don't feel very good. Like I can feel it's off, and I feel not guilty. It's not like she doesn't ask me to call her. I want to call her. Our relationship is important to me. So yeah, really stepping back and looking at, it's really easy. I've worked, when I first got to London, I was working insane hours and really got to a point where I was just like, for what? Like, who am I doing this for? What am I doing this for? This isn't making me happy. This isn't making me feel good. And this isn't who I am. And this isn't how I want to live my life. So yeah, in terms of connection, as one example, that is how I try to, as I said, it's not always, it's not a straight line, but try to really build that life work integration.
So is there, like, because when you talk about that sense of not feeling guilty, but you notice that there's something off, would you say that when you know what pillar is really important to you and what inside that pillar is a priority for you, that you feel, that sense of being off? I don't know if there's another word for it, but maybe you feel inauthentic to who you're, wanting to be for yourself and for others?
Yeah, absolutely. And that awareness, I mean, you do have to figure that part out first. And that's why it's so powerful to step away and look at what's important to you. But definitely, I think, had I not been aware of what was important to me, I wouldn't know why I felt off. I wouldn't know why I felt inauthentic. Similarly, like physically as well, if I move quite regularly, I try to eat well, I try to stay hydrated, I try to get enough sleep. If I don't do those things, I do check in with myself very regularly as well. If I don't do those things, usually I can look back in the last week and say, why don't I feel very good? What's off? And then I can try and change it for the week going forward.
Yeah, so good. So it's almost like you've got like a framework, the 4 pillars, let's say. And then within that is like these checkpoints where you're just like, hey, I got to check in with myself.
Yeah.
Can I move the needle? Do I need to move the needle? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think, well-being can feel really complicated because there's so much information out there. And I think with how much information out there, it feels like I have to do these 75 things to be, where I'm supposed to be, which isn't realistic. Like, we only have 24 hours in the day. And so it's really about, like, I just like checking in with myself.
Yeah.
And I do it every week, that, like, looking at, something as simple as what worked well and what didn't.
Totally. Those
That's
are
all.
such good questions.
Yeah.
Okay. So what worked well and what didn't work so well? In other words, what do you want to start doing? What do you want to stop doing? What do you want to tweak? Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I always tell people that I encounter that have had a class with me or, coaching session with me is like, I might have some really specialized knowledge from a field that I love. That'll be helpful for you. But at the end of the day, you person, you're your own life expert, not me.
Yeah.
I'm not the expert
Yeah.
of your life.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
we don't give
Exactly.
ourselves enough credit. And we think we need to
Yeah.
be like reading 20 books or being like a Tony
Yeah.
Robbins and reading 700 books in order to understand that part of our lives or how we function. But really, right? Check in, give it a try.
Yeah.
See how it works.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, then maybe it isn't really what you think is as important as you think it is important. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Because sometimes we think something's so important to us, but maybe it
Yeah.
isn't. Maybe it's actually, influenced somebody in our lives or something or
Yes.
experience in our lives has influenced us to feel like
Yeah.
this has to be a priority for me, but it may not necessarily be. Has that ever happened to you?
I think, in the lens of work, and I think that's why that life work integration has become more apparent for me, really focusing on life as a whole, because I think, I come from, I'm half Chinese. I grew up in a pretty traditional Chinese household in the sense that, you had to get good grades, had to get a good job, all of these things, and work and success at work is very highly praised. And so I had that in me for my whole upbringing. And so I was like, I gotta get a good job. I have to do well in work. I have to make money, all of these things. And I got to a point where I was like, yes, of course, I need to make money. I gotta live. And I also really want I love working, and I think it's a huge part. It is a huge part of my life. It's a huge part of many people's lives, and a huge part of my purpose. But it's not everything, and it wasn't to the degree that it was in my life. And only upon actually stopping and reflecting. And I think it's really important to be very intentional about it. Nobody can do this work for you. Like you said, like, sure, you can speak to an expert who understands theories, who understands, human behavior, how these things work, but they don't know you like you know yourself. And so being intentional and being curious with yourself, if you've never really done this, just start to ask yourself questions.
Yeah, I think that's really key, that however you know yourself, that there's an underlying layer of curiosity there.
Yeah.
Because I have seen people harm themselves by feeling like they know themselves better than anybody and they're not going to do A and they're only going to do B. And that's just how it's going to be. And you hear that when I'm noticing that happening, even it happens in myself.
Yep.
I'll use terms like always and never.
Yeah.
I always, I never do. Why do I have to know myself like that? Why can't I be like often, right?
Yes.
Or not as often?
Yes. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, because when you get into absolutes, where's there room for change, right? Or for growth, or for expression, or for discovery, or adventure. I think we need those parts of us to be open to, just have a little cutout for a window. You can keep the window closed for now, but just have, the frame in there so you can open the window, and see what you see out there.
Yeah. And I love that. I think, as we age, as we have different experiences, like, we do change. And that curiosity allows us to ask questions and see how we're developing, and see, it doesn't matter how aware you are, you will always change. Things in your life will always affect you. And there's always room for that growth and that development. And you're only going to see that with curiosity.
It's so true. So I wonder what's a good question. Like, I'm starting to think, if somebody was listening to this and they're like, yeah, I do say that about myself often when I'm describing myself, that I can say I always or never. So what are some good curiosity questions or like nudges? Like, the first one that comes to my mind is, open yourself to try something new. Like, just try something you've never tried before. And as a science experiment, like, just to see what's the outcome. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't, but try something you've never tried before. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think that's because I think there are, I mean, I'm thinking of times that I'm like, I will never do that, or
Okay,
the
let's
never.
go to that. Yeah. When have you said about yourself that I'll never, I never
I
do
feel
that?
like, I feel like, um, a lot of adrenaline, like sports, like jumping out of a plane, bungee jumping, anything with heights. Um, I feel like I'm just like, I will never do that.
Mm.
But I don't like those absences. I hear that. I'm like, that sounds so strong and intense. I do have a fear of heights, but maybe 10 years down the line, I don't have it anymore. Who knows? You
Who
never know,
knows?
right?
Yeah.
Stranger things have happened.
Yeah.
Um, but I think, or even like pushing that boundary, trying to, don't have to jump out of a plane for
No.
this example, but can you go on a slightly higher diving board? Can you see how that makes you feel? I think I really like that idea of trying new things and
Mm.
just seeing what happens, seeing how it makes you feel, because
Yes.
you don't you don't know. You don't know what's on the other
No.
side of it.
No. And the other thing that I heard when you started talking about your own personal experience was there was a fear there for you.
Yeah,
So how often when
absolutely.
we say the always or the never, the
Yeah,
absolutes, is there an underlying fear that we may not even realize is there? So could there be a
absolutely.
fear there that you could slowly work towards, overcoming? And like you said, it's
Absolutely.
not, you don't just go jumping out of an airplane when you're afraid of heights,
Yeah.
but yeah, you work your way up, right? I can jump
Yeah.
off a higher diving board and I'll land in the water and I'll be okay. And
Yeah.
then I do it and then I'm actually okay, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
that evidence that you are okay. And I think a great point is being aware of when you say always or never. Like that's
yeah,
almost that first step, because then you can say, you catch yourself, you slow down, you catch yourself. Oh, I said always. Is that true?
yeah,
Is it really always, or is it really
yeah.
never?
Right?
And start kind of peeling back. Like,
Yeah.
why do you feel
So
that way?
yeah. Oh my gosh, this is reminding me. So last night, my sister, my parents, everyone was over for dinner. And I have a nephew who's 5. And him and my husband like to play kind of wrestle, or not really wrestle, but they play a lot. My husband's quite physical. And sometimes he'll, pull him upside down and like tickle
Yeah.
his tummy or whatever. Anyways, he caught him off guard and he did that. So my husband
Hmm.
took my nephew and was holding him upside down. And he thought he was laughing, but he was like kind of scream crying that sounded kind of like
Oh,
laughing. Well, my nephew got so upset with my husband and was convinced in this absolute certainty that he was
yeah.
hurting him on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I actually, at one point, I was like, he's like coming to this absolute like certainty in his mind, like this is his choice to believe this way because
Yeah.
what he just experienced has just confirmed that to him. So I
Yeah.
actually got down on like to his level and I said, how many times has your uncle done that to you before? And he's like, lots of times. And I
Yeah.
said, so in the other times he did it, was he trying to hurt you? And he said, no. And I said, so why do you think he was trying to hurt you this time? Right. And I never got to finish the whole entire conversation because that's just how it is when there's lots of people. Because everyone
Yeah.
else was
Yeah.
trying to convince him.
Yeah.
Obviously, he wasn't intentionally hurting him. But I
Yeah.
thought, well, what better way? Like, I can't convince him. He can convince
No.
himself. So I
Yeah.
was just trying to present to him his own experience and all the
Yeah.
times that I played felt where he's
Yeah.
been okay
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
maybe help him get to a place where, oh yeah, he probably wasn't really intending to hurt me. And then
Yeah.
he could like accept that as a more probable possibility, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so important with all children, adult, anybody, people. We are much more likely to understand something when we come to terms with it ourselves.
Yeah.
And I really like that example because I'm very guilty of writing stories for other people. I think,
I just want to fix your life. So I'll write a story for you.
right?
Sure.
Writing stories for other people, and particularly in the sense of I'm a recovering people pleaser,
Mm.
struggle setting boundaries, and I think I've always, whenever I've wanted to ask for something, I've always said, before I even asked for it, oh, they can't do it because X, Y, and Z. And then stopping yourself to be like, you don't even know. You haven't even asked yet. They could say yes, or it maybe they do say no, but and then, if they do say no, then you have all these other stories as to why they said no. Um, and so I think about, really trying to again be aware of when you're doing that. And for any other recovering people pleasers or people pleasers out there, to really stop and just catch yourself and remind yourself that you don't actually know the full likely you don't know the full story because
Yeah.
you haven't asked or you haven't set that boundary yet.
Yeah, totally. And I also wanted to backtrack and ask you, when it comes to connection and relationships, because we know that's a really, well, it's not everyone's priority, but when you
Yeah.
look at research, touche, but it does, point to the fact that positive social relationships are obviously one of the single most contributing factors, right, to the well-being equation.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that's difficult when you get in a place where you don't necessarily have a lot of social connections, at least I know for myself, is I'll find myself moving more towards the floundering side of the spectrum.
Mhm.
So when you're living in London and you've got family in Canada, because I'm sure many people can relate to sort of the scenario,
Yeah.
how do you find the harmony or the integration between
Yeah.
making sure that you are keeping a pulse and filling the relationships that are overseas, and also putting enough of an effort into building connections for you right now for where you are?
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
that
I
like
love
for you?
that. I love that question. I think it's so important because 100%, if you put too much into Canada, you're not going to make any friends here. If you put too much into your friends here, you're going to lose valuable not lose, but they won't be as strong as they would have been had you put some time into
Yeah, or
them.
they might feel distant, right? Or yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I think what it is just, again, that awareness. For me personally, I think
yeah. How does it work for you? Yeah,
sometimes, yeah, some people may be able to actually, and sometimes I do this. Sometimes I'll actually write down, these are the people that
mm,
are important to me that I have not reached out to in a little while. They may be in Canada, they may be here in London. And these are the people that I'm going to call them, or I'm going to just send them a message. Something I love to do is send people, I mean, I'm very, very expressive, and I don't believe that we share appreciation enough for the people that we love. And so I'm very, very, I would say I'm very good at, or it's very important to me to make sure I do that. And I think that's a huge it's a very impactful way of strengthening a relationship or a connection by just telling someone how much you appreciate them in your life. That seems to be a very powerful way for me to keep those connections.
hmm,
But yeah, in terms of not balancing, but integrating the two, it is about taking stock again, and I don't do this all the time. It probably sounds like I do a lot of this. It's not all the time. It's just times where because I do check in with myself every week, because connection is important to me, it is something that I will think about. Um, and there are people, and I think the other thing too is I don't have a lot of people. I've met so many wonderful people in my travels. I have a lot of friends all over the world, but there are small groups. There's a small group in Canada and there's a small group in London that I spend time nurturing those relationships.
mm.
Because as I said, we know this, we only have 24 hours in the day. You can't spread yourself too thin while you're also trying to exercise, grow a business, travel, spend time with your partner, make sure he doesn't feel neglected. Like there's so many things that we have to do. So really quality versus quantity
Hmm.
or over quantity.
Yeah. And how did you start to gain sort of the social connections when you moved to a new country?
Yeah,
Were the Yeah, what was that like?
it was really hard.
Yeah.
I
So
actually wrote about it.
oh, that's so good. I just think people can really resonate with, yeah, where
Yeah,
I
yeah,
moved to a new country. How do I develop positive social connections, and how do I keep them positive?
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I think the first thing I would say is that it's normal to feel lonely. It's very normal to feel lonely. I think that I wrote about this in a piece I just did for a mixed race. They're called Mixed Race Faces. It's a diversity platform where we all get to come together, share our stories. And it's funny how many people reached out to me. They're like, oh, I totally resonate with this, because I think in particular, London, or I'm sure any big city, you feel almost even lonelier because there are human beings all around you, and you feel invisible when you first move. You feel like, I would have like panic attacks. I would come home, I would be on the tube crying, coming home from work, because I was on my own. I was all on my own. And I mean, it wasn't like this at the very beginning. It was just a few months in, but that realization that like, this is really hard, and you're crying. I wasn't sobbing, but you're crying quietly, kind of in the corner. Nobody notices. And it makes it even more lonely. And so I share that because I want to normalize, if you're watching or you're listening, it is normal to feel that way. And in time, you do build connections. I have wonderful friends here now. It took time, because it does take time to build relationships. But I think it helps that I come from I studied psychology. I understood the importance of getting out there. Even when I didn't want to, I would still go out. I would try to put myself out there to meet people. I would try to go do things that I enjoy. Did a lot of things on my own, do things that I enjoyed, because I would meet people that also enjoy those things. And over time, you start to see, meet someone, you see them a few times, and, over the months, they become a friend. But it is, again, that being intentional. And, even if it's hard, trying to put yourself out there.
For me, what keeps coming to mind is like that whole fake it till you make it. Because there are obviously some not so great side effects of faking it until you make it.
Yes.
But sometimes it's important to do things when we don't feel like doing them.
Yeah.
And I think it's like when if you're in a well enough psychological headspace, to ask yourself, what will be the outcome if I don't do this and continue not to do it? And what will be the outcome if I push myself to do it, even though I don't feel like it? If the end result or answer to you aligns with something that, like you would say, I'm thinking is a priority for you or important to you, then it means you've got to put that step forward, even though you don't feel like it, and do it. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. It is, but it does require that awareness to ask yourself, exactly as you said, like, am I psychologically well enough to do this? For me, I was, and I knew that I needed to put myself out there. And it did get to a point where I was like, I'm not doing well. And I did go get help, and I did go see a therapist. And she was so helpful and instrumental in me being okay, being able to continue to do this, having that outlet once a week, going to talk to someone who was able to support me. Because the thing is that I have had all these wonderful friends and family back home, that, I mean, this is on me. I didn't tell anyone how I was feeling. I didn't tell anyone the extent of how I was feeling, because at that point in my life, I didn't know how to. I think I still would struggle now. It's not really, it doesn't come naturally to me to reach out and ask for help.
But I just want to point out that you did reach out.
Yeah.
You may not have reached out to help to somebody very close in your social circle, but you still reached out for help. And I don't think it really matters who you're asking help from. What matters is that you're asking for help.
Yes. Yeah.
And see, and this is beautiful thing that you're sharing, because sometimes, I don't know about you, I mean, the personification of sunshine is what you become known as for many people. And here you are sharing with everybody that there are times where you don't feel like sunshine. Maybe sometimes you feel like rain, or you feel like sunshine's been covered over by the clouds. And that is life. That's part of life. And even though just because you're in the space of well-being doesn't mean you don't need, additional psychological and mental support.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that that's why I'm able to be as happy as I am. And I still have days where, of course, I don't feel as great. That, as you said, like, that is life. And for me, I think the most kind of present example of what I'm working through is that it's so hard when you have a personal brand of being this really positive person that's really happy, and you are a human being. So you also have days and times, weeks where you just don't feel like showing up on social media, where you just don't feel like talking to people. And so I'm learning now in the process of really figuring out kind of what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think asking for help, getting that support is key, because you can be as introverted as you could be the most introverted person in the world. We still, as human beings, we need connection with other human beings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. I have help coming from multiple directions right now.
Yeah.
Like I talked to my chiropractor, and now I'm seeing acupuncturist who's like absolutely amazing. And then I have like a mental health program that I'm following. And then I talked to my doctor, and she's got me on another program. And I'm like, bring it on.
Yeah.
Right. I do this show, and many people already know I do this show. Primarily the first reason is for social connection.
Yeah.
Because I knew that I was floundering in that area. I wasn't feeling good. And even this morning, I kind of woke up, I had such a beautiful weekend with my husband. And I was like, man, he has to work. I have to work. Like, I miss him. So I woke up with just a little bit of like a blah feeling.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I can go for a walk. I'm going to just put myself in the sunshine, and I get to come back and talk to Carmanah. And thank goodness every single time I record a show, I'm like, thank goodness. Like, I'm just so thankful for the social connection.
Yeah.
I love it. I just love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So let's talk before we end. Let's talk a little bit about that whole idea of this well-being being the degree to which your desired quality of life matches your reality.
Yes.
Okay. What do you explain to us? Like what, like that's, so when you filled that out, I was fascinated by how you defined what it means to you. And what I love about what you say is, I'm going to wait for you to explain it, but what I love without you explaining it is that you're sharing something that's probably very personal, unique in a sense, because well-being doesn't have to have one definition and only one definition. So
yeah.
So
and I think, I don't think it does. I think if you Google it, I think it's the state of being comfortable and happy or something like that. But I think it's so personal. And this one, when I define this for myself, I also tried to define it for the general people, which is not going to touch everyone. Not everyone's going to resonate with it, of course. But I really see well-being as very synonymous with quality of life. So what is your desired quality of life? What do you want your life to look like? As we've said, what are your priorities? What's important to you? And then what does your life actually look like? And that is kind of the degree to which you're going to have poor to excellent well-being, kind of on that scale.
So let's just use some other words here. So if what I imagine my life to be, that would be my quality, and how what I do aligns with that. Is that kind of what you're saying? That will determine whether that quality or my, my dream life, or how I imagine my life to be, feels for me in reality.
So how
do you adjust that when it's off for people? How do you adjust that?
I think similar to what we were talking about before, you have to understand what your desired life looks like. Because if you don't know what that looks like, you're not going to be able to change any of your actions in a way that's going to help you get there. So really understanding, what does that look like, for you? Not what has society told me it should look like, not what my mom has told me it should look like, or my friend. What do I want it to look like? And then it's almost like sounds very boring, but doing an audit of your current state. Once you have that understanding of what that looks like, what am I doing now? I say that I want to be healthy, right? I want to wake up, I want to have energy. But right now I'm only sleeping like 5 hours a night, and it's not very good quality sleep. I'm eating a lot of takeaway food, and I'm working, I get up and I work from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. I don't really take a break. Well, you're not going to feel very good, and that's not going to be your desired kind of the life that you want to live. um Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no. Does it work the other way around too? Like, have you been in situations either, for yourself or working with your clients where it switches and then that desired quality of life is what changes to match the current actions?
um I haven't seen that. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm sure it could happen. Personally, I I haven't seen it in my clients. I guess with myself, um, no, I feel like I'm not gonna say always or never,
Yeah,
but I
cool.
feel like I'm pretty confident about
Mhm.
what I want
Yeah,
in my life.
yeah.
In terms of my clients, I think for I've been doing this for so long. I spend a lot of time, obviously, it's what I do for work, it's what I believe in. For other people, I think that it takes time because it takes time and it takes a lot
Mm.
of unlearning. We have a lot of
Yeah.
expectations that have been put onto us. So it takes a lot of peeling back to really look at what that desired quality of life looks
Mhm.
like for you.
What's coming to mind, and it's a bit challenging, but I'm going to bring it up anyways. But my challenge and not my challenge to us having this
Yeah.
conversation is
Yes.
thinking about somebody who doesn't necessarily get to choose what their desired quality of life could
Yeah.
look and feel like anymore.
Yeah.
I actually am a part-time caregiver or care partner for my godmother. And I
Hmm.
look at her life, and there's so many things that she actually cannot choose for herself, for her
Yeah.
quality of life, that she has to adjust her quality of life number
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
meet the things she can or cannot do. But
Yeah.
it also doesn't mean that she can't adjust her quality of life in a different area. So going back to
Yes.
those pillars or that framework that you gave us,
Yeah.
maybe it's not that all four can be at like a 9, right? And we're
Yeah.
always, guided
Yeah.
towards, feeling like a 9 or a 10 in our physical. So if I
Yeah.
think about her life physically, there's no way that she could even try to achieve a 10 in the physical
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
But, there are other things that she loves. Like she's totally a foodie and she really loves just good food, right?
Yeah.
And so that is an area, it's a comfort thing, probably, and it might
Yeah.
be more emotional, psychological, but it's an area where she can enjoy still, right? So
Yeah.
her priority in that space is way higher than most other people because
Yes.
she has to compensate for an area that she has no control over in that
Yeah.
physical side where she cannot place, a certain level of achievement or moving
Yeah.
towards or goal striving or whatever in.
Yeah.
So I just,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like I hear us talking about it. And at the same time, I'm thinking about her and her life. And if she was listening to this conversation, she'd be like, but I don't get to choose what
Yeah.
my desired quality of life
Yeah.
should feel
Yeah.
like or could feel
Yeah.
like. I actually
Yeah.
don't get to choose. And like, wow. So that is, I think we need to be open, right? To like
Yeah.
what's moving. Is it the
Yes.
desired quality of life? Is it the reality, like the actions I actually can or cannot take?
Yeah.
And again, the things that are important to us, and maybe that they're changing over
Yeah.
time, or they've changed not because we've asked for them to change, right? She
Yes.
didn't
Yeah.
ask to get, you
Yeah.
know, whatever
Yeah.
ailments she has. I don't want to share too much about her
Yeah.
without asking
Yeah.
her, but
Yeah.
she
No,
didn't
of
ask for that.
course.
It's
Yeah.
dealt to
Yeah.
her. And she just
Yeah.
has to like, yeah, compensate for it, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, what do
I
you
love
make of
that you
that?
brought
Like, yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that you brought that up because I think, and I should have said this at the beginning. There is a deep level of privilege to be able to pick and choose across all of the pillars. This is what I want, and this is what I'm going to work towards. So I 100% agree with you, because there are people. I mean, there are people in all parts of the world that could never dream of having the simple things that often we take for granted living in developed countries like
Yeah.
Canada, like the UK. So 100%, I completely agree with you on that.
Yeah.
I think it then is about, as you said, shifting to what you can be intentional about,
Yeah.
not trying to minimize at
No,
all
no,
the suffering or the things that
no.
people struggle with, but choosing to focus on, you know what, these are the things that are important to me. These are my priorities.
Yeah.
And this is what I can control. This is what I can change in my life. And so that's what I'm going to focus on.
Well, and when I had a conversation with Sue Langley, we were talking a little bit about, because it was right around like the start of the Ukraine war with Russia, and it was there was immense flooding in the area that she was living in. And, she said, if I choose not to be my best, okay, like if I'm born into privilege, what can I do to change what I was born into or where I was born? I can't change that either. But what I can do is use those resources that I have to be my best so that I can influence or support or ripple over into places that may not have, access to what I have access to.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that idea of privilege needs to be viewed as a privilege because, if I have access to this, then how can I use this for my benefit so that through my benefit, I can benefit somebody else?
100%. I love that. And I think that's because I get that a lot from clients, from people I speak to. They, with the media and everything that's happening around us, it can feel really heavy, and it can feel like, and these are good people that want to do good things, and they just feel like, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to go about my day. I feel so guilty with the things that I have because these people are suffering. And what you just said, that mindset shift to really tap into, okay, rather than, it's obviously easier said than done, but trying not to get bogged down in that and trying to focus on, this is how I want to make positive change. This is how I want to make an impact in someone's day or a group of people's day. This is what I want to do. And look after yourself so that you're able to do that.
Yeah.
Because we're going to be much, much better contributing members of society if we can focus on that.
Yeah. And I mean, I think in the initial reaction or response, there is a place for sadness, for hurt, for anger, for despair. But I do think that we need to, and if there's guilt, I mean, come on, like if you've followed any of Brene Brown's work, she'd be on this conversation saying like, that ain't going to get you nowhere. So, knowing that if you feel guilty because this is like a resource you have access to because of a place of the world you live in or the financial means you have, use it for good, for yourself and for others. Don't just allow it to just, give you comfort. Give yourself comfort so you can give somebody else comfort. And I think as long as you keep in that alignment somehow as it fluctuates in life, and I think that's sort of the harmony or the integration that we need, because the guilt, it's not going to get anyone anything. Give anything to anyone. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that what you said about that, having sadness and empowering yourself to move forward, it's and I'm, I go to therapy regularly. It's my way of continuing to take care of my mental well-being, talking through things that are happening in my life. And that is something that I'm working through, is really learning how to feel difficult emotions and still moving forward.
Oh man,
creating space for that, and still, allowing yourself to feel, it's okay to feel those things, while also, moving forward, not just sitting in it for too long.
Yeah, that's been my biggest crutch, being in this space too, is I actually want to just push away negative emotions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Even though I totally can label them and recognize them and all that stuff, and I know that there's a purpose, and I know they're telling me information and da 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 da. Go away. I still don't want to be friends with you.
Exactly.
I picked up a book last year, The Positive Side of Negative Emotions. And in there was some research on sadness, actually, and just the intimacy. I think I brought this up in another show too, but it is such a profound emotion, and one that really should be leaned into, especially with others, because it brings about intimacy in relationships.
Yes.
I'm not talking about romantic or sensual intimacy. I'm just talking about the closeness and the connection that two human beings can feel because they allowed themselves to feel sadness. Yes. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
No, not at all. That's beautiful.
Well, anything else you'd like to add? I feel like that was just such a beautiful, well-rounded conversation with so many tips for people.
Yeah. No, I really thank you so much for having me on. I know this is the first time we've spoken, and I'm really grateful that I came across your post for this. I'm really grateful
Yeah,
that we were able to connect, have this conversation,
I know.
and I hope it was helpful for people. And I'm really looking forward to collaborating again in the future
I was
somehow.
gonna say it's not gonna be our last conversation. I
Yeah.
guarantee it to you. That's awesome. Well, thanks so much again.
No worries. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Wellbeing That Works. Before you go, take 1 minute to write down your takeaway from today's guest. And be sure to download our Wellbeing Evaluation Sheet to help you along your wellbeing journey. And if you've got something to share to inspire others, be sure to be a guest on our show. Until next time, with love and kindness.